Carolina Ixta, thanks so much for joining us on BABF Shortcuts.
Thank you for having me.
Just quickly, BABF Shortcuts is really just a chance for festival goers to get to know some of our authors and presenters a little bit beforehand. I'm just going to read a short bio for you. You're a writer and educator from Oakland, California, daughter of Mexican immigrants with a BA in creative writing and Spanish language and lit from UC Santa Cruz and a master's in education from UC Berkeley. You bring critical race theory into your elementary classroom. And your debut novel, Shut Up, This Is Serious, draws deeply from your Oakland roots and your lived experience. So, my first question to you is if you could write a letter to the Fruitvale of your childhood, addressed not to a person, but to the neighborhood itself, what would you want it to know about how it shaped your sense of possibility, both as a writer and an educator?
Oh, wow. That's such a beautiful question and not one I was expecting. Wow. I mean, I think I would start by thanking it. It definitely impacted me in a way that I'm still making sense of today. Like, I just moved back into the neighborhood about a year ago, and it felt like such a homecoming. It felt so long overdue. And I think everything that people say is negative about the area, that like, I personally don't feel this way, but I know many people do, that it's like there's so many immigrants and it's crime ridden and there's traffic and no one knows how to drive and this and that, right? It's like all the things I love so much about it that gives it
Mm.
character. Like, it definitely embraced my family when they migrated. I think the people are the best people like in the world and have shaped me as a person and have shaped my characters and shaped the way that I think about the world. Like, every negative thing that people say about Fruitvale is probably my favorite thing about it. So I think I would just thank it, and I would let it know that, like, I don't know, that I think the only way that I can put it is, like, I remember the hair salon that I would go to as a kid. Like, I still see that hairstylist, and that hair salon is defunct now and is covered in graffiti and is like an eyesore to many people. And to me, it's like the most beautiful place in the world.
Yeah.
And I would probably say something about how we perceive beauty in like a very racialized way. And because this area is so dense with immigrants and with the Black community, I think it is perceived to be so ugly, but I literally think it's the most beautiful place in the world.
I love that. Um, so your pedagogy centers critical race theory at the
Hmm.
primary level. What's a lesson or moment from your classroom that fundamentally challenged your own assumptions about justice or identity?
Mm, that's interesting. There's a couple. I think a few years ago, I presented at CABE, which is like a bilingual educators conference. It was virtual because of the pandemic. And I was teaching about photosynthesis, but the way that I taught it to my students was by way of understanding where plants are present and where they're not. And we talked about like environmental injustice and environmental racism, and how there are many communities, specifically, we talked about Los Angeles, that do not have access to green spaces. And then by way of that, like the cause and effect, like the air quality is worse and blah, blah, blah. And I think that lesson has stuck with me because it has a lot to do with what my second book is about. Um, but I also think that being an educator has made me think about my own biases and privileges in ways that I've never had to before. When I was student teaching in Oakland, Oakland has a very large Guatemalan population, which is so beautiful. Um, and a lot of those families that were coming in, I remember feeling so perhaps naively versed in how to deal with Latino families because I had grown up in one, but I had grown up in a Mexican family. And I remember going up to a family member and trying to get a permission slip signed. And the woman not only did not speak Spanish, she spoke Mum, which is like the indigenous language of Guatemala. And she couldn't read and she couldn't write. So there was a lot of biases that I had to check, where I was like, wow, I just handed this woman a slip of paper thinking that she'd be able to sign it in a language that she does not speak, and she's unable to write at this current or read at this current point of her life. So interactions with families have really profoundly shaped the way that I think about empathy and the way that I think about my own privileges. Like, I was like, wow, I'm walking up to this woman as like a UC Berkeley student, right? I'm like a white Latina, I'm Mexican. There's a lot of like layers that happen in that interaction. And that one interaction, it was so brief and it was in my upbringing, right? It was in my student teaching, but has stuck with me forever in the way that I perceive people, in the way that I might think that I know more than them, in the way that I might think and assume, period, right? So that was a really, those two were really, really big moments for me.
So your family's journey to Oakland was, as you shared, sort of the result of a misstep, right?
Yeah.
Um, so a beautiful accident.
Hmm.
How do you think your work would be different if your grandfather had gotten off the bus in Los Angeles as planned?
Oh, wow. I was just in LA a few weeks ago for the LA Times Book Festival, and shout out to LA, but I was like, man, like, I can't imagine having grown up here, right? Like, it's just so different. And I remember the person who was announcing the awards misspoke, and they were like, this book takes place in East LA. And I was so offended because I was like, no, like, this is not what I wanted. This is Oakland Erasure. I don't know. Like, I have some family in the IE. I have some family in LA. So I would spend a lot of time in Southern California growing up. Just, we would go to Mexico every summer. So we'd stop on the way and then go and then stop on the way coming back. They're completely different to me. Like, they're completely, like, I think about something as simple as a car wash. Like, car washing culture is so big in Southern California, and here there's like none of that. It's something so simple, right? Gas stations are almost luxurious in Southern California, and here they're totally not. Um, Water drinking culture, right? Like, everyone there buys bottled water, and here we're such environmental activists of like, no, 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 we get the Brita filter. So I don't know. Like, I definitely am so grateful. It was such a beautiful, happy accident, and I'm so grateful we landed here and not in the city, because Oakland is a really specific place. And I say that about San Francisco because I feel like Oakland is consistently categorized as like the ugly cousin or the ugly sister in comparison in the Bay Area. And again, like, I think it's the best place to live and the best place to have grown up. There's a really specific culture and language to living in Oakland that I don't think other people understand if they are not from here. But yeah, like, I don't think, had he not made that mistake, like, even in, say, everything went the same way and I still was going to write a young adult novel, there are many more novels and literature and art that is set in Los Angeles that is warmly embraced. And I don't know of many books set in Oakland, and the ones that are always like problem novels. It's about police brutality, right? It's about exploitation of labor. And I had yet to seen, I know like Aida Salazar is local, and she writes about the Bay, but like, other than that, I had not seen anyone write specifically about Fruitvale, like Oakland, yeah, like a very specific pinpoint of a place. So I'm grateful because I get to, I think, bring awareness to a community that I don't think is looked at in that way. I think people see the Bay Area as a really cool place. I mean, we have such historic movements in art, like the hyphy movement. Like, we are known for culture, but never in the way that we might think about in LA or or like a New York, right? So I'm so grateful, and I really don't think there's a better place to be.
This sort of ties into what you were just saying, but so as a daughter of Mexican immigrants and a writer who navigates multiple cultural worlds, what's a question that you wish people would ask about the complexity of belonging, but never do?
I think that, like, specifically being Mexican, the reason I wrote this book is because I was like, I've read a lot of books in YA at this point about how discrimination plagues the Mexican community, right? Like, how we face discrimination, how there's a threat of deportation and this and that. But I really wish that we would talk more about the issues within the community more. Like, one of the main reasons I wrote the book was to discuss like anti-Black racism in the Latino and specifically the Mexican community. Um, but like, I really wish we would move, and with that, right? It wasn't just about anti-Black racism. It was first, I opened the book with the scene of like Letty's mother going like, "Oh God, I wish my daughter was this light," which is something that happened a lot growing. It didn't happen to me, right? Because I had the privilege of being a white Latina, but like around me in my grandparents' home, like that would happen all the time. Of like, "Oh, don't worry, she'll get lighter." And so there's this like anti-indigenous sentiment that then turns to like an anti-black sentiment. But like, I really, really want specifically Mexican people to think about it's hard, right? But to think about the privileges that we do have. And I say that it's hard because we're like living in a political atmosphere where we're so deeply rejected. But I don't think people understand how much we do that to other people. And I mean, I wrote this book about anti Black racism, but we do it to Central Americans quite often, right? Like, I just finished reading Solito by Javier Zamora, and he immigrates from El Salvador and talks about his journey coming up through Mexico. And I have many students from Central America and even from South America, but specifically from Central America, who feel such resentment anytime someone accidentally calls them Mexican, right? They're like, no, 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 I'm from Guatemala, I'm from El Salvador. And first, because like it's important, right, that they're named correctly, but also because I don't think people understand that Mexican people are often really flagrantly discriminatory toward people from Central America for the same reason that white people are really discriminatory to people who are Mexican here, which is like we have this xenophobic ideas about them, right? So I think with us, it's a mix of like the xenophobia and the anti-indigenous sentiment, right? That's a conversation that I wish people would have that I think I'll write about at some point. But even some of my like most beloved Mexican friends, I have to correct frequently and say like, the Salvadorian community is not our enemy. Like we love them, right? The Guatemalans are not our enemy. We love them. And I've learned a lot through working with my students, right, about how they feel in this country and the mistakes people make when they assume that they're all Mexican. And I hope that's somewhere where that's an area that we can move to talk about soon. It is, I will say, it's very challenging, like I said, in this political atmosphere where I think we're just seen under one broad brushstroke of like Latino, get out of here, right? Deportation, mass deportation. But there is nuance around that conversation that I think people need to have.
In your book, Shut Up, This is Serious, memory and place are inseparable. So if you could distill the emotional weather of Oakland into a single metaphor, what would it be? And
Oh,
how
wow.
does that metaphor sort of move through your fiction?
You know, when I was writing this book, I actually kind of started it when I was an undergrad, and I was so homesick that I would go on Google Maps and I would just like drag the cursor like down like International Avenue, because I was like, one day I'm gonna go home and I won't be here. And the like, it's funny because I know you said emotional weather, but I just think about like overcast weather in Oakland, like it's the most common. And specifically in the place that I wrote it, I just was thinking about a lot of gray. I was thinking about overpasses and streets and then phone wires and then like a gray sky. So for me, that emotional weather was contemplative. And I wanted Belen to be very pensive, to present externally as someone who like didn't care and was kind of rough around the edges and was just like a young teen girl, but was incredibly contemplative and pensive and introspective. And then I think in the book I broke it into two sections between fall and or three, but really two, fall and spring. And in the spring, like I don't know. And I write it there and I wrote it in my acknowledgement section because I don't know else to say it, but it's like the smell of sunshine. Like sometimes I open my window in the morning and I know it's going to be a warm day just by the way the air feels and smells. And like, I think there's something so beautifully optimistic about Oakland when it's spring. Like, I just helped my friend move. She moved to Lake Merritt, and as I was driving away, I drove past the lake, and everyone is vending, and everyone is selling, and people are smoking, and people are drinking. And I think that's what makes it beautiful. Like, I live by a barber shop, and I see these like men sitting out playing dice on the corner and enjoying the day. And again, I think many people would not see that as a beautiful sight, but to me, it's such a sign of community and everyone's like enjoying the weather. I go to Diamond Park often and I try to just enjoy being part of this community. So I would say it's like contemplative, introspective, but also really celebratory and optimistic, which is exactly how I feel about living here, right? Like it makes me very introspective and contemplative about my place and my identity, but it also makes me very optimistic for what's to come.
Carolina Ixta, thanks so much for joining us on BABF Shortcuts.
Thank you for having me.
See you at the festival.
Yeah, see you there.